Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. You know, today we're going back in time a little bit, back to 19th century Persia.
Wow.
And I know what you're thinking, Persia.
Yeah.
Ancient history.
Right.
What's that got to do with me?
Exactly.
Well, we're diving into a work by Abdu'l-Bahá, a prominent figure in the Baha'i faith called the Tablet of Divine Civilization.
Okay.
And it's shockingly relevant to today.
It is.
We're talking about the decline of a once great empire and the surprising factors that Abdu'l-Bahá points to as the root causes.
That's right.
It's a story of power,
Yeah.
corruption, and the dangers of clinging to the past.
Absolutely. And what makes Abdu'l-Bahā's perspective so interesting is that he was writing from a place of deep concern for his nation.
Right.
He saw Persia, once a center of learning and innovation, losing its way. And he believed that the actions of some of the religious leaders were a big part of the problem.
Okay, so paint a picture for us.
Sure.
What was going on in Persia that made Abdu'l-Bahá feel the need to write what you might call a cautionary tale?
Well, imagine a society where the people in charge of religion, of guiding people's morals and spirituality, are more concerned with their own power and wealth than the well-being of the people they're supposed to serve.
Wow.
That was the situation Abdu'l-Bahá was facing.
So are we talking outright corruption here?
Yes. In many cases, Abdu'l-Bahá accused some religious leaders of living lavish lifestyles, accumulating riches, while their followers struggled.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't just about the money.
Okay.
He also saw them using their religious authority to control information and stifle intellectual growth.
Really?
Think about it. They saw science and philosophy as threats.
Like these big, dangerous ideas?
Like dangerous ideas that could undermine their power.
So they're actively trying to keep people in the dark.
Right.
That seems pretty counterproductive.
It might seem strange to us now, but knowledge is power. And some of these leaders weren't keen on sharing that power. They feared that if people started thinking for themselves, questioning the status quo, their own authority would weaken.
It's like they were clinging to the past while the rest of the world was racing ahead.
Exactly.
What was the overall social climate in Persia like during this time?
It was a climate of division.
Okay.
Abdu'l-Bahá talks about sectarianism, where different religious groups are constantly at odds with each other. You can imagine how this would make it almost impossible to solve the big challenges facing Persia.
Right.
It's a classic example of how internal conflict can lead to a downfall.
Right.
And sadly, Abdu'l-Bahá believed that some of the religious leaders were actively stoking these divisions, using their influence to pit people against each other.
So it's like trying to row a boat where everyone's pulling in different directions.
Exactly.
No wonder they weren't making much progress.
Right.
And to make matters worse, they're facing all these new challenges and opportunities. Modern systems of government, advancements in technology, new ways of thinking about education. How did these leaders respond to the need for reform?
Not well.
Really?
Abdu'l-Bahá criticized them for actively resisting these changes. Imagine trying to drag Persia into the modern world with leaders who are basically clinging to the past.
Yeah.
No wonder they fell behind.
So they saw modernization as a threat, not an opportunity.
Exactly.
So we've got corrupt leaders, a stifled intellectual climate, and a deeply divided society.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a recipe for success.
It wasn't, but before you get too discouraged, remember that Abdu'l-Bahá wasn't just about pointing fingers.
Oh, okay.
He also offered solutions, a roadmap for how to get things back on track.
Okay, so let's hear it. What did he propose?
Well, Abdu'l-Bahá believed that to really turn things around, Persia needed a complete overhaul of its leadership.
A complete overhaul.
Yeah, he wasn't just talking about getting rid of a few bad apples.
Right.
He was calling for a fundamental shift in how religious authority functioned within society.
So a fundamental shift. Where did he think the biggest changes needed to happen?
He pointed right back at the religious leaders.
Okay.
He called for serious reforms within the clergy, emphasizing the need for educated, ethical leaders who were genuinely dedicated to public service.
So not just about power.
No. He believed that true religious leadership should be about guiding people toward knowledge, unity, and progress, not clinging to power or outdated ideas.
That's a pretty bold proposition, especially back then, a complete shift in the balance of power.
It was, but Abdu'l-Bahá went even further.
He did?
Yeah, he argued for the separation of church and state,
Wow.
believing that the intertwining of religious and political power was a recipe for the kind of corruption he was witnessing in Persia.
Yeah.
He envisioned a system where these two spheres operated independently, each serving the people in its own distinct way.
That's a concept that's still debated in many parts of the world today.
It is.
It's fascinating how these ideas from the past can still feel so relevant to the challenges we face today.
Exactly, and one of the key tools Abdu'l-Bahá saw for creating this better future was education. Yeah, he was a strong advocate for universal education, believing that knowledge should be accessible to everyone, regardless of their background or social standing. He saw education, particularly in the sciences, ethics, and religion, as the key to unlocking human potential and building a more just and prosperous society.
So if you've got a population that's educated and empowered, they're less likely to be taken advantage of, less likely to be swayed by fear and manipulation.
Precisely. Abdu'l-Bahá believed that education should be holistic, encompassing not just practical skills, but also moral and spiritual development.
Okay.
He didn't just want people to be smart, he wanted them to be good.
Right.
It wasn't enough to simply build a technologically advanced society.
Right.
It had to be grounded in ethical principles and a commitment to justice and unity.
Earlier, you mentioned the distinction Abdu'l-Bahá made between true religion and the actions of these corrupt leaders.
Right.
It's a beautiful idea, but is it really realistic to expect leaders to live up to such high ideals? History seems to suggest otherwise.
It's a valid question, and it gets to the heart of what Abdu'l-Bahá was trying to do.
Okay.
He wasn't condemning faith itself. He was calling out the hypocrisy of those who use religion as a tool for their own selfish ends.
Yeah.
He believed that authentic faith should be a driving force for positive change, not a tool for oppression or control.
So in a way, he was trying to reclaim the true spirit of religion.
Yes.
He saw the potential for it to be a source of good in the world, but he also recognized how easily it could be twisted and misused.
Exactly. He wanted to remind people that true religion in its purest form is about things like knowledge, compassion, unity, and service to humanity.
Right.
And that's a message that resonates far beyond the context of 19th century Persia.
Yeah.
We see these same patterns playing out today, not just in religion,
Oh, okay.
but in any system where power is concentrated and unchecked.
We see it when ideologies are manipulated for political gain.
Yes.
When systems of power become corrupted, when individuals use their positions for personal enrichment rather than serving the common good. It's a sobering thought. It makes you wonder, are we any less susceptible to these same pitfalls today?
Right.
I mean, obviously we've made progress in many ways, but are we truly immune to the kinds of problems that plagued Persia all those years ago?
It's the question Abdu'l-Bahá forces us to consider, isn't it? He didn't write the Tablet of Divine Civilization as a historical analysis. He wrote it as a call to action.
Oh, wow.
He wanted to spark a conversation about how we can build a better future one where knowledge, unity, and justice prevail.
So how do we make sure we don't fall into the same traps that brought down Persia? What can we learn from their mistakes? So how do we make sure we don't fall into those same traps that brought down Persia? What can we learn from their mistakes?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it, Abdu'l-Bahá? He wasn't just a historian.
Right, yeah.
He was a visionary. He believed that humanity has the potential for incredible progress,
Right.
but that we also have a tendency to get in our own way.
Yeah.
And those pitfalls, those patterns of decline,
Yeah.
they can manifest in any era, in any society.
So what should we be on the lookout for? What are the red flags?
Well, we've already touched on a few of them.
Okay.
Corruption, abuse of power, suppression of knowledge, the intentional creation of division and conflict.
Right.
These are all warning signs that something isn't quite right.
And these warning signs, they're not just limited to religious institutions, right?
No, not at all.
I mean, we see these same patterns in governments, corporations, even social movements.
Exactly. Anytime you have individuals or groups prioritizing their own interests over the well-being of the whole,
Right.
it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Okay, so we need to be aware of these patterns, but what can we do about it?
Right.
It can feel pretty overwhelming as an individual.
Yeah.
Like, how can I possibly make a difference?
Well, it starts with awareness.
Okay.
You've got to be informed. You've got to understand how these patterns of decline operate. You've got to recognize the warning signs, and you've got to be willing to ask critical questions.
Like, what kind of questions? Give us some example.
We'll start by asking, who holds the power in this situation?
Okay.
And how are they using it?
Right.
Are they promoting unity or division?
Okay.
Are they encouraging intellectual growth or trying to stifle dissent? Are they prioritizing the common good? Or are they serving their own narrow interests?
Those are some tough questions to ask.
They are.
Especially when they challenge the status quo, or even people we might admire or respect.
Yeah.
It's easier to just turn a blind eye, tell yourself it's not your problem.
It is easier to look away.
Right.
But Abdu'l-Bahá's message was all about taking responsibility.
Okay.
We all have a role to play in shaping a better future, whether it's through our own actions, our choices, or the way we engage with the world around us.
So it's not about overthrowing systems or pointing fingers.
No.
But about each of us taking a hard look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And asking ourselves, am I contributing to the problem or am I part of the solution?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that change starts with each of us.
Okay.
Are we educating ourselves? Are we expanding our understanding of the world?
Right.
Are we embracing diversity and seeking common ground with those who are different from us?
Yeah.
Are we standing up for justice and speaking out against oppression? These are the kinds of actions that can shift the tide.
So we've gone deep on the decline of Persia through the lens of Abdu'l-Bahá's Tablet of Divine Civilization.
We have.
We've seen how corruption, the misuse of power and resistance to change can have a devastating impact on a society.
Right.
But we've also explored Abdu'l-Bahá's vision for a better future, one grounded in knowledge, unity, and justice.
And I think the real challenge Abdu'l-Bahá leaves us with is this.
Okay.
How do we ensure that the institutions we're a part of, whether they're religious, political, or social,
Right.
truly serve the well-being of humanity?
Yeah.
Are they promoting knowledge, unity, and progress?
Yeah.
Or are they clinging to outdated ideas and power structures? Are they empowering individuals to reach their full potential?
These are questions that each of us needs to grapple with. It's about more than just understanding history. It's about applying those lessons to our own lives and the choices we make every single day.
You know, Abdu'l-Bahá once wrote, "The world is but one country, and mankind its citizens." I think that's a powerful reminder that we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And that the choices we make, even small ones, have ripple effects.
Right.
So as you go about your day, as you interact with the world around you, remember the lessons of Persia and the timeless wisdom of Abdu'l-Bahá.
We'll leave you with that food for thought. Right.
Okay.
Until next time.